So I had a recent conversation with my friend AJ just a couple days ago on this podcast. He speaks French and Arabic as well as English, and I was asking him a little bit about like, and I'll ask you the same sorts of questions. And the reason I'm asking these questions is since I learned Spanish to like a conversational level. I'm not fluent, but I can get around pretty well. Mostly, I learned in Central America traveling throughout my high school years, but in my experience learning Spanish, like it changed qualitatively, like the way I think. Like I started thinking less in words and more in like concepts I kind of think on a more sublingual level, and then the words just kind of naturally flow out. And I think learning Spanish helped me get to that place. It even translated over to English, where like I kind of just think of the concepts and I let the words come out rather than like thinking of the words and saying them. So that was my personal experience where like it changed the way I think to learn a second language. It kind of made me realize that like within a language, there's certain key differences. The one I brought up the other day, I'll bring it up again now. It's like in Spanish, like you have hunger, you have thirst, you have tiredness. You aren't hungry. It's not like in English, I'm hungry, I'm tired, I'm thirsty.
Yeah.
And it's just like little subtle differences like that, which when I first started learning Spanish, I was just like, oh, like they use have instead of am in this context. And I didn't think about it. But after like spending time in Central America, I realized like there's these little subtle differences that actually like change the way people think about life. Like it's different to have hunger. It's not you, it's not part of your identity if you're not hungry. So it kind of separates it. And then, like the way I am, I start thinking, what are their cultural effects and why is it this way? But that's kind of getting into the weeds. So my question to you is, I guess, did you notice anything similar in learning French? Did it change the way you think? Did it change, your perception of the world around you? Did it change the way you interact in English?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely. Yeah. Specifically because all of my memories of French and all the things I associate with French when I start speaking French, naturally those memories are going to be activated. That's just kind of a property of the brain, is that the things that we're thinking of and things that we have memories associated with are going to activate other memories. It's called spreading activation. And so when I speak French, it's activating all these related memories that I have, both to my time in France and to learning French and to the context I was in when I was learning French. And so it'll bring back different memories as I'm speaking it. And then I'll start to kind of feel a certain way and be in kind of a certain mood. And I also, I totally agree with what you're saying about the distinctions that languages make, like having hungry or being hungry. And actually they do matter a lot. And it's kind of hard to say, like, if it's the chicken or the egg, in the sense that, like, obviously a culture being a certain way can then make them more likely to make a language that describes that culture, or the reverse possibility of they have a language and then that kind of creates the confines of the culture, which enforces certain behaviors. And so I think it's both. One example that's really interesting actually is there's a tribe in Africa, and they don't have a way to blame people or to label them. So like in the US, we could say, he's a jerk, or he's lazy, or he's bad. And they don't have those types of words because their communication is based more on needs. So instead of saying like, he's a jerk, or, he took my cow, he's like a terrible person, he's a jerk, whatever, they have to speak in terms of needs. And so the way that their language works is they'll say, well, I'm feeling like sad because I need a cow so that I can have food. And so when Jake took my cow, this is how I was feeling because these were my needs, and these are how my needs aren't being met. And so all of a sudden it's more about what I need rather than about turning Jake into a bad guy. And it totally changes the way that we think about conflict, because we're not putting the other person down by putting them in a certain box or a certain label, which makes it easier to kind of be negative towards a person. Like if you just say, I needed this and this is why I'm feeling this way, then it's not the same as making somebody into like some label, like a jerk or something like that, where then it's easier to justify doing something negative towards
Right.
them. So that's kind of an interesting example where I think language influences and it decreases. There's very low rates of violence and conflict in this particular tribe.
I love that. And I actually want to circle right back to this, specifically the essential needs. I know you're kind of laying it out there, but just before jumping off the language, I have one more question on the language. And you kind of already touched on it indirectly, but would you say you have a different personality when you're speaking French than when you're speaking English? Like I've noticed when I'm speaking Spanish, like I think my voice is a little higher, my word choice is different, and it's like I come across differently. And part of it's just like I don't speak as well, so like part of it I'm struggling to get it up. But even when I'm not struggling, I still have a different personality qualities. I'm wondering if you've experienced that with French.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's partly the way that I learned French was literally like a computer learning French. It wasn't like an organic, like conversational way. So I think when I speak French, I do have an element of being different just because I didn't learn it in the most organic way. And I think that's something that I had to balance because I was learning so many words so quickly and I didn't have a lot of chances to like practice them in a realistic setting. And so when I first got to France, because I actually went to France, I was able to kind of calibrate myself in so many different ways. I already had the pronunciation because I was speaking the language with one of my friends back in the US. But when I got to France, it was like, it definitely gave me a better sense of like frequency of words and like how to use certain phrases and all the subtleties where I had everything in my memory, but it was like piecing it together was kind of what I started to figure out. And so I would say, yeah, it definitely like I have a slightly different personality, I think partly because of the way that I learned French and partly because like living in France, you're a part of a different culture. And that kind of brings with it a different set of beliefs and identity and everything else. Yeah,
for sure.
I would say even beyond that, like just traveling, I kind of adopt the identity of wherever I go to some